Hi, this is Christy from earthschooling.com, and before we start our cooking thing today, I wanted to show you some of the tricks to making it go smoothly. And this actually doesn't take that long to set up. You can do it over time. You may already have it set up, or you can just do it in a day or two. But having this set up will make your cooking go a lot more smoothly. So what I do is I have all of my grains in one cupboard here, and there's not just grains in here, there's like flaxseed and flaxseed meal and arrowroot and things like that. So pretty much all my baking ingredients are organized there, and it really does make a difference to have them in containers instead of the different shaped bags that are all stuffed in here. It's very easy for me to see them and get them out, and then I have the dates on them when they're going to expire so I can replace them when I need to. Then the other thing is I have all the spices in here, and I have them on little rotating tables. It makes it a lot easier to find the spices when you can actually view each one and they're not like on top of each other. And I do buy some spice mixes, like at the farmer's market they make these nice spice mixes. And there's even ones like at Trader Joe's, they have one called Everything But the Bagel Sesame. That's nice on fish and breads and a lot of other things. And I got just different spice mixtures. So if you want to just make something simple and you don't want to think about all the spices that go in it, you can just toss them in. And then of course you need a space. I keep this space clear, and I have all of my measuring cups hanging up here and my measuring spoons hanging up here. So this area is very easy to just quickly take out things and bake them or cook them. So this is the second part of the food preparation area that I have to make things go more smoothly. And you need to have an area where you can set out your cutting boards and cut things. And also I use the food processor for chopping things and dicing things. And then I use the bread maker. And so having this area set out ahead of time and having it ready makes things go a lot more quickly. And one tip though is if you're preparing these things in a small college apartment like my daughter will be doing, you can have these same preparation areas. You may just need to make a couple modifications. Your preparation area may need to be set up the day before you start, and you can use one of those folding tables to set it up. You can use one of those white smooth surface folding tables, and then just put your food preparation things on it that day when you're working, and then put it away later. And for creating the organized spaces in your cupboards, if you don't have enough cupboard space, you can easily create those organized spaces in plastic bins or containers, and then just get those out the day you're going to be doing your big cooking project. Hi, this is Christy from earthschooling.com, and today I'm going to be cooking some meals for the next 2 weeks with my daughter, who's coming home from college. And I'm going to be showing her how you can save money and eat healthier and save time by cooking your food all at one time. Like, we're going to cook food for the next 2 weeks. And what we're going to be doing is actually cooking for both of us for 2 weeks. And one thing I've already done is that I did the shopping yesterday. And so I got some basic things like peppers and some berries to put in the rice. And I try to use as many fresh ingredients as I can, fresh onions and things like that. But I also, in a limited way, I try to also use prepared ingredients to save some time. So artichoke hearts is something that, for instance, would be a lot more difficult to do from fresh. So I have them already prepared. So I like to use fresh ingredients as much as possible, but with some things I'll use canned items or jarred items. So my formula, which is very easy to follow, and I'll show you a little bit of it, is that we prepare 3 things. We prepare a meat or protein source, and then we prepare numerous grain sources like rice or bread or whatever like that, and then we prepare some vegetable dishes. And we put each of those in different containers so that throughout the next 2 weeks we can mix and match. So for instance, if I made a spaghetti sauce, I may put it on the noodles, but I'm actually known to put it on rice sometimes, and sometimes I'll spread it over bread, fresh bread. So we follow a whole foods eating plan, and what that means is that we use, as many fresh ingredients as possible that are straight from the earth. We use a lot of whole grains, and if you look here, we have a whole selection of different grains and different seeds, like flaxseed and different things like that, and things like quinoa flakes, and just a lot of different things that we can add to our meals. We have those all ready, so it helps on the meal planning if you have things organized and ready that you can take from. And another part of the whole foods eating, you want to get things that are whole grains and things that are fresh from the earth, that are not canned, although as I said, I do use some things that are canned and jarred. And we also use organic meats that are locally sourced and humanely sourced. We do not do vegan or vegetarian in the household because I am severely allergic to most protein sources that are vegan or vegetarian, and so I would literally die if I tried to eat that way. So, but as I go along, I might mention some substitutes you can make, and you can definitely follow this way of cooking for any diet. If you're vegan or vegetarian, or you have a low sugar diet, or any kind of diet you have, you can follow this method of cooking. You can just substitute things, and I'll mention substitutes as we go along, but I don't want to get too off track, so I'm going to focus more on what we're doing and just mention substitutes here and there. Also, another thing to mention is that I cannot eat gluten or dairy, and so our method of cooking is also gluten-free and dairy-free. Okay, so like I said before, we start out by shopping. It took me a couple hours to shop. I bought a lot of bulk things at Costco because they have, a lot of these things in bulk. And then I shopped for some smaller things at another local store. And so it only took me a couple hours to shop. And then I get all of my things ready. And the trick to cooking a lot of things at once is that you need to use as many methods of cooking as possible. Because for instance, if you bake everything, then you're not going to be able to fit everything in your oven. So we're cooking meals for the next 2 weeks, and we're using all these different methods. So I'll show you. We're going to bake 2 big pans of things. Whoops. You don't have to follow me with the... We're going to use the crock pot. I'm going to make a loaf in these pans. We're going to use the wok. And then we're going to use the wok, and then we're also going to use just a regular cooking pot. So this way, we get to use all the space on our counter in the most efficient way. And also, like I mentioned before, our formula is that we cook a protein source, a grain source, and a vegetable. And then we put those in different containers, and we mix and match throughout the week. Usually what I do when my daughter's not around is I keep things pretty simple. So for instance, on this pan here, I will literally put a bunch of salmon on here and just put some spices on top. So I don't even need a recipe or anything. And then I'll do maybe another pan of chicken or something and with some spices. And once again, no recipes needed. Another thing I'll do for the grains is I will just put a bunch of rice in the rice cooker and have plain brown rice most of the week, mixed in with, like, I'll do some gluten-free noodles, or I'll make some homemade bread, and I'll just rotate between those grains. So that's very simple, no real recipe needed. And then for my vegetables, what I'll do is I'll take some broccoli and just use some nice fancy spices, and no recipe needed once again. So the way I usually do this is I do everything with no recipe. I just put very simple things, simple bread, simple rice, simple noodles, simple protein source, simple vegetables. It tastes wonderful though. And then what you can do when you're mixing and matching is you can make your dish more interesting by adding sauces. Like I'll always keep like some chutney on hand, or some fancy mustard, or maybe some little tomato sauces, or just different sauces. And so if your simple meal isn't interesting enough, you can always add something to it. But what I've done for my daughter is I'm doing a combination of that, which I'm going to do some of the simple cooking for us. but I've also decided to mix it up a little bit and put some recipes in there. So a few of the things we're going to be making today, we're following some recipes. And so that will take a little bit more preparation, but you know, we're doing it all in a couple hours, and so it will be worth it for the next 2 weeks. So we will get started. Okay, so we just made this whole pan of salmon, and it literally took us about 5 minutes, and my daughter was actually amazed, right, Mosi?
I'm still amazed.
Okay, so what we did was we just took scissors and cut up the salmon, put it on this really big tray, and then we had some, one of my favorite spice mixes here on half of it, and then I cut up some fresh dill and put some garlic over that, and we're just gonna bake this at 450 for 20 minutes, and it will be done. And our other meat that we're making at the same time in the oven, you can edit that, whatever.
You're gonna have to cut a lot out there.
Is going to be the chicken, and we're actually making 2 kinds of chicken. One of them was marinated overnight in a sauce, and we're going to put that on this tray, and we're also going to put this chicken on the tray. So already in, like, you know, 15 minutes here, we're going to have like all these different main dishes. So this one that we're making is a recipe I got from the Pritkin cookbook, like maybe 20 years ago actually. It's just a basic recipe where you have I used almond milk here and an egg substitute to dip it in. And then we have a nice cornmeal breading with a lot of different spices in it. And so we just basically, you know, take the chicken pieces, we dip them in that, and then we put the breading on it, and then we put it on the tray, and then we're gonna bake those. We're not gonna fry them, we're gonna bake them, but they turn out like really nice, like chicken fingers or something. So that, those are our first 2 main dishes, and like as you can see, we have 2 kinds of chicken and 2 kinds of salmon already, and we're just started. Okay, so what we're doing now is I've figured out how many onions and peppers and other vegetables, you know, that we're putting in our recipes that I've decided to make. And instead of, you know, usually when you make a recipe, you chop up everything individually for that recipe. It says 1 onion, so you chop 1 onion. Well, we have like 4 recipes we're making. And so we are going to just chop everything at once for all those recipes and have them waiting for us. And a nice tool to use is a food processor, which you can see right there. And, you know, I just sort of pre-cut things a little bit so that they're easier to put in the food processor. When my kids were younger, I used to do all of this by hand. I just hated having electronic things in my house, and I didn't use a food processor. And if you have people to help, that's fine. You can just do it by hand too. But what we're going to do is we're going to do this with all the peppers and the onions and maybe some of the carrots as well, and then we're going to have everything ready for us when we make those recipes. Okay, so here we have all the vegetables chopped up. That took me about maybe 5 to 10 minutes. And I just have a bunch of peppers chopped up, and this could be green peppers, but they're not today. Some onions that are more mushy, and then some onions that are chopped, and we have a bunch of chopped carrots. So when you chop all the vegetables at one time, you're saving time, and now all I have to do is I make sure all my ingredients for my recipes are laid out, and then basically all I'm doing is just putting things together and mixing them. So I'm not preparing and mixing at the same time, which takes a lot less time. So as I was talking about before, we're preparing all of our vegetables ahead of time because we want to be able just to mix things now in our recipes. So we did a bunch of stuff in the food processor, and now Mosi is cutting up some vegetables for our vegetable beef stew.
I'm helping.
And in our vegetable beef stew, we have a lot of carrots and green peppers. And if you want to make it vegetarian, you can actually just put more vegetables in, add some more potatoes, and you could put some beans in there as well. It's very easy to substitute the beef out of the stew. In fact, sometimes I just make a vegetable stew. So, and that's going in the crock pot, and it will be sitting there for 6 hours. So that is, we're still into our vegetable preparation here. And these mushrooms that we're going to chop up are going to be for another dish we're making. So we're still doing vegetable prep here, and when we're done with vegetable prep, we'll actually be making some of the recipes. What we're doing right now is we're going to make some rice in the rice cooker. And what I do a lot of the times is I'll just do the plain brown rice, and I won't put anything on it but salt. And I really like plain brown rice. But what we're going to do is we are going to cook up the rice in the rice cooker to make it cook up, you know, effortlessly and easily. And then after it's cooked, we're gonna mix it in with some of those chopped vegetables you saw earlier and some pine nuts and maybe some cashews or sliced almonds and some spices, and we're gonna make some interesting rice. So right now we're just gonna start though by just cooking the rice, so while we're doing other things, the rice can be cooking. Another grain that we're doing today is bread. And to make the bread a lot easier, I have all of my different gluten-free flours and ingredients that I need for my bread in this cupboard here. And because they're all ready and easily accessible, it's very easy to make the bread. And what I do then is I will take those ingredients and put them in the bread maker, and then it usually takes about anywhere from 1.5 to 4 hours for the bread to be ready. And for me to mix up the ingredients actually is very quick because all the ingredients are organized like you saw, and I just toss them in the bread maker, and it usually takes me about 10 minutes to put them in there, and then I just press the button and it's cooking. And then a couple hours later we get some lovely homemade gluten-free bread to go with our meal preparation. And we're actually going to take a break right now, aren't we, Mosi, and eat some of this bread as a snack. Okay, so we cooked up all these meats earlier, and we're actually going to, now that we've prepared the vegetables, we are going to make up some more recipes. But while we were doing that, the meats were cooking, and they're done now and they've cooled. And so we're going to put them in containers. Now, you can use glass containers if you want to avoid the plastic. I'm going to use plastic containers right now just because my daughter's going to be taking these to in her lunch and stuff like that, and we want to be more convenient. And we only really keep these for a couple weeks, so we're not getting a lot of the plastic residue in that couple weeks. Not too worried about it right now. So we're going to put these in plastic containers. Now, one reason I use this size of container, and there's also a lot of glass containers that come in this size too, this nice little small size, is because this automatically measures your servings for you. So if you're trying to keep on a lower calorie diet, or keep your servings, you know, at a nice healthy serving, this container is perfect for one serving. So I'm just going to then put the rest of these things in containers. And what I will do with each container is I will label it. And the reason I just label it right on the container is because when I wash these in the dishwasher, the label will come right off. So I'm going to write salmon. And then we have it ready for freezing or to put in the refrigerator. I usually put a few of these things in the refrigerator. They'll last up to like 3 or 4 days. And then as I need them, I'll take more out of the freezer that when I've kept them there. Okay, as you can see, we have finished all of our prep work, and that is going to make cooking these dishes a lot easier. We have a couple main dishes we're going to be cooking up. We already cooked up our rice, and we're going to be making mixing in some vegetables and nuts and things with the rice. We also made a nice vegetable beef stew, but like I said, you can put beans in there instead of the beef or just the vegetables. I'll do that sometimes. One of my daughters is actually vegan, and so I do adapt a lot of recipes for her. And so we've made a lot of things, and we do have something in the oven as well. But all of this nice prep work that we just did, it was really fun. We used the food processor, we used just some chopping, we made some scallions, we chopped these by hand. We chopped the mushrooms by hand, but then we used the food processor for these. And now that we have all of our ingredients laid out, it's going to be so quick to make these recipes. All we have to do is just sort of toss things together. And so that just makes it a lot more efficient. I am using canned tomatoes for this, and I actually went ahead and opened the cans because to make it more streamlined, you don't want to be like opening cans in the middle of your mixing and stuff. And also I put my hair up because as you can see, once we start really getting down to the chopping and the nitty-gritty of this task, we don't want our hair in the way. So on to mixing up these wonderful recipes now. So right now Mosi's making the orange chicken, the recipe for orange chicken. And you see we used a really large number of nice big fresh mushrooms in here. And the nice thing about this recipe is it's very easily adaptable to be vegetarian. Instead of the chicken pieces, you know, we only have like a little bit of chicken in there, but instead of those chicken pieces, you can actually just add more mushrooms or potatoes. and it really has the same taste and the same texture. You really don't miss the chicken at all if you make it at vegetarian. And so this is a very easy recipe to adapt. After we put the mushrooms in there, we're going to put some lovely scallions in there and some mandarin oranges on top, and we'll have a lovely mandarin orange chicken dish. Okay, so this recipe that we're making here is called picadillo, and it's so good because it has cumin in it and tomatoes and coriander, and it has these lovely green olives in it. And the base, you know, you have the peppers and the onions and the garlic as the base, but another ingredient in here is ground beef. I actually made ground turkey and ground beef as a mixture. But the great thing about this is it's also very easy to adapt to a vegetarian or vegan style. Like I said, I have a daughter that's vegan, and to make this for her, I can make it just with black beans. The other thing I love about the picadillo recipe is it has raisins in it. And another thing that reminded me of something I wanted to tell you is that you can be creative in these recipes. Like I've been telling you along the way that you can substitute beans and potatoes and different things in your recipes, or just put more vegetables. But you can also be creative with some of the ingredients. Like this recipe calls for raisins, but I actually found a really nice combination at Trader Joe's that has raisins, cherries, cranberries, and blueberries in it, and I'm going to use that instead of just straight raisins. Okay, so our brown rice came out of the rice cooker, so it's looking all delicious, and we're going to spice it up a little bit and make some interesting rice. We're going to make a Turkish rice and a Mexican rice. And this Turkish rice is so easy, and it's one of my favorites. We're going to put, some of these onions that we chopped earlier in here, and we're going to put quite a few onions in here. And I've already preheated the pan, and there's some olive oil in there. And so we'll put a bunch of onions in there, and then the other thing that goes in here, which is really amazing, my recipe card says a half cup of raisins, but I have to admit, I love these, raisins so much. And like I said, I got a little creative with this, and I got some a mixture of golden raisins, cherries, cranberries, and blueberries. Usually this recipe is done with golden raisins, but instead of the half cup, I'm going to do about a cup of raisins here. And you see I measured with my hand because sometimes I just do approximation. And then my favorite ingredient here is the pine nuts. And you can put sliced almonds in here, that also works. And I'm just going to go ahead and put these pine nuts in here. And then this recipe has a little bit of cinnamon in it. I think I'll put that in at the end. So what we do here is we have our onion and our raisins and our pine nuts, and we're going to stir fry those up. Even the pine nuts, we want the pine nuts to be stir fried. We want the onions and the pine nuts to be stir fried, and we want the raisins to be a little plump. And so we're going to take some time to stir fry those up, and then we'll put the rice and the cinnamon in. Okay, now we're going to do the Mexican rice, and as I showed you before, our rice came out of the rice cooker like this, and we made some lovely Turkish rice with it earlier. We're going to take the rest of this rice and make some Mexican rice with it. And I love this recipe. It has scallions and onions and peppers and corn and mushrooms and chilies and these lovely spices, cumin, coriander, and some cayenne. And so we're just going to, of course, take the scallions, onions, and peppers and garlic and stir fry those first. And of course we prepare these ahead of time. And so I don't have to do any chopping because we've already done all of our chopping all at one time. And I'll go ahead and put the scallions and the mushrooms in here too. And then before we add the rice, we're going to stir fry all of these things so that they get cooked up nicely. So our scallions and onions and peppers and mushrooms have stir fried up nicely here. And the thing I love about this Mexican rice is that it has so many amazing vegetables and spices and ingredients in it. Look at all this, And we're gonna put the chilies in there now. And we're gonna put some artichoke hearts in there. And the wonderful thing about this is once I put the spices and the rice in, it also has some tomatoes in it. This could be a whole meal, like a whole vegan meal. So I'm going to be using it as a side dish, but it could definitely pass as a meal as well. And I'll just put, it has some coriander too. And all of our teaspoons are dirty, so I'm just using a regular spoon. I always like to put a little bit more spice than the recipe says because we like things spicy. Has a little cayenne. And I don't like these little things on the top because we never use sprinkles of spices around here. So we'll put like a little bit of cayenne in here. And then it also has some salt. I put some salt in there. And we'll put some cumin. And then we'll add the rice, and we'll have some lovely Mexican rice, which, like I said, could be a main dish, a vegetarian or vegan main dish. And it's a lovely side dish that goes with, you know, pretty much anything. We are on our final steps now, and I actually saved the easiest things to last because at the end you're getting a little tired. This has actually only taken us 3 hours, and so we're doing pretty good, or 3.5 hours. So 3.5 hours for actually I think what ended up to be about 3 weeks of meals. And we're gonna end with doing some noodles and some vegetables. And I have a spice mix that I always like to put on my broccoli. It's called Hamon, and it's from Kerbin Cuisine. And I actually don't think they make this anymore, but you can find your own favorite spice mix somewhere. I found this at the farmer's market. So instead of having to have a cupboard of so many spices, or, you know, just to make it easier, like I just literally throw this spice on here, and it's so interesting. It makes the broccoli just amazing, and all I had to do was cook up the broccoli and put a little spice on it. And I'm actually looking using frozen broccoli, but you could also use fresh broccoli. It doesn't matter, you know, either way. And the next thing we're going to make is the noodles. Like I said, we have our fresh bread that we made, we have our rice as our grain, and then our third grain is the noodles. And since I cannot have gluten, we are using chickpea noodles. And these are actually especially nice to cook ahead because some of these noodles tend to be a little bit dry, so if you cook them ahead of time, they get a chance to retain their moisture and they reheat really well. So this is our last step, and then we are done. So no more than 4 hours to do all of this cooking for the next 2-3 weeks. We are now done, and I wanted just to give you some tips at the very end here. If you have anything left over from your vegetables that you chopped up, we have some leftover peppers and some leftover carrots, and all you have to do is put them in Ziploc bags and put them in the freezer. And these carrots are going to be great in like a vegetable soup someday. And the peppers, I love like just, you know, having the peppers already pre-chopped and putting them in my scrambled eggs or my omelet in the morning. So these, you know, are extras. And you may have noticed something throughout the video that we use the same pans over and over. I don't actually have 4 of these pans. We just used it, I don't know, 3 or 4 times. And what I'll do to save us the energy of doing all the dishes is I will actually just rinse things out really quick in between cooking. So I'm not actually doing all the dishes at the very end or anything like that. And you can use the same dish over and over. So I think we use the wok 3 times as well. And then, so we have our noodles that were in that container, which I'm going to put in smaller containers. We have the bread that we made. And then we have, I'll take a picture and show you what we have in the freezer out in the garage. We have a big freezer, but we also have a freezer in our refrigerator as well. And we have a lot of containers. And we probably have, let's see, looking at the list we made, we might have 100 or more containers. And now what we do then when we want to eat is we just mix and match. So this isn't all we have. We have, like I said, we have a ton of them in the refrigerator and the freezer. And I might take, you know, a main dish. In my case, this is a meatloaf. And I'll take a vegetable. And I'll take a rice. And this is actually 2 servings of rice, but I'll just take half of this. And so that'll be my meal right there. And that way you can easily pack that in a lunch or take it away with you if you're going on a vacation and you're worried about finding the food you need to eat. And you can also You know, it's nice because the portions are already portioned out. It's already made for you. It's easy. You don't have to cook. Now, this method might not work for everyone. I use it for myself. You know, living alone, it's a great way to cook, and then you are saving money and not just buying ingredients for one person. It also works when I had teenage children at home. I would do this because, like I said, one of them was vegan, one of them tended to eat a lot of meat, and another one just would eat, you know, sort of neutral. And my daughter, who's vegan, she might use, you know, this Mexican rice with a ton of vegetables in it, and a serving of broccoli because she loves broccoli. And then if she was here, we actually would have prepared today some things like, you know, black bean cakes, or we would have actually taken like half of some of our dishes and just made them without the meat. And then she would also have other things she could choose from. And then if my son came by to eat, he would probably actually take 2 of these meatloaves because he's very tall, like 6'7" or something, and very muscular, so he eats a lot more. And so it's nice with teenagers, you know, who are always on the run and doing things, that they can just get what they want, and that works out really well too. And you can still eat together as a family. You can just pick your own food. So like I said, it might not work for everyone, but those are the 2 situations in which I've used it. And the other situation is for my college daughter, because that's the whole reason we're doing that this weekend, is I want to show her a method that's sustainable for her, where she can save money and save time, because she's going out on her own soon. And you know, you can't afford to eat out all the time or cook for one person and not be on a budget. And my son already uses this method. He loves this method, and he has been using it for about a year on his own. He has his favorite foods that he cooks using this method. And so now I'm passing this to my daughter, and we are going to eat now. Hi, this is Christy from earthschooling.com, and I wanted to show you the results of my daughter. My daughter and I cooked yesterday, and this was a project for her and I to cook food for the next few weeks. And so this is what we ended up with after 4 hours of cooking. And we have all sorts of things, you know, grains, we have the breads here, the fresh breads we made, we even have some noodles, different kinds of rices, different main dishes, and stews. It's just all this food. And so one thing I wanted to mention though is, you know, when we were doing the main video, I told you how we're just working together, you know, cooking all these things together, and in 4 hours, you know, we get all this food for a couple weeks. And actually, I think we've gone into 3 weeks with this set. So one thing though is the reason we did it in 4 hours yesterday was because we wanted to videotape it, and also because Mosi is just here for the weekend and she's going back to college. And this is a great way to feed a college student because all of this food is, you know, organic. All the grains and vegetables and the meat is organic and naturally farmed and sustainably farmed. Very healthy food, homemade, as I say, with love, and it is a fraction of the cost of meal services at college or meal services, you know, that you were to order. But one thing I wanted to mention, I keep saying this, but I'm going to finally mention it, is that you don't have to do all this in 4 hours. It is actually pretty intense when you're just cooking for 4 hours straight, even if you have another person helping you, like, you know, Mosi and I were working together yesterday. But usually when I do this, I will do this over a few days, and it's actually much easier that way. It seems like it might just draw out the process, but what I will do is, you know, all that preparation of the vegetables, I might do that ahead of time, or I might just cook up some of the bread ahead of time or something. So you can actually make this a very easy process by, you know, all the steps that I showed you. You can do those over a series of days, you know, while you're in the middle of a TV show, or while you're cooking dinner for something else, or, you know, as I told my daughter, you know, while you're studying or something. So a lot of these steps can be performed very easily over a few days, and then you'll have all this like we have, but it won't be like 4 or 5 hours of intense work. So anyway, thank you for watching, and we will enjoy our meals, and we hope you enjoy the videos and the recipes.